Thanks once again for the invite and allowing the TUC just to say a few words to the event today. Obviously, there's no more appropriate city really for trade unions to come and talk about the work between cooperatives and trade unions than in Manchester, in Greater Manchester, obviously where the modern cooperative movement was founded, and the city of Manchester, where, even though as a Scouser it pains me to say it, 150 years ago in June, this June, the TUC was founded, and obviously we'll be celebrating our 150th both in June and at our Congress, which is also going to be held in Manchester this year. Now, I'm sure many of you in the audience will be aware of the challenges that the modern trade union movement faces. We do suffer from decline in membership. In 2015-16, the trade union movement lost 250,000 members. We are struggling to build membership in the private sector, and membership is under pressure in the public sector. But that said, we still have 6 million members, around 120,000 workplace activists. We remain the country's largest voluntary organisation by some way, and still offer working people a unique way of empowering themselves and giving themselves voice at work through collectivism, through solidarity, through voice at work, through workers representing each other against the employer. But those challenges need to be faced if the trade union movement is to remain a genuinely effective voice for working people. Now, not least amongst these is how trade unions engage, organise and represent people in precarious employment. Over recent years, we've seen a rapid rise in 0 hours contracts. The number of workers on temporary contracts has increased significantly since 2010, but most significant has been the increase amongst self-employed workers. The number of workers regarded as self-employed has increased by 1 million since 2007, is now estimated at around 5 million, and that's almost as many, and very soon will be more, than are actually working in the public sector, which is obviously still the sector where trade union membership and density is at its highest. The challenge that these precarious workers and self-employed workers in particular face is reflected by the fact that over the same period in which their numbers have been growing, their earnings have fallen by 20%, and 70% of self-employed workers don't have a pension. Given that these workers workers who are in unions still are generally better paid and safer at work and enjoy better terms and conditions, it follows that self-employed workers are those who would stand to gain the most if we can find a model of collective organisation that works for them. I don't think there's any dispute about that. The discussion is around how do we do it. Now, the existing legal framework upon which trade unions rely to gain recognition, where we are only really allowed to get recognition for workers who are directly employed by an employer, usually at a fixed workplace, is not fit for purpose to organise this particular group of workers. And it's also true, whilst there are restrictions in the legal framework, it's also true that trade unions' own internal structures often aren't flexible enough, aren't able to adapt quickly enough to new forms of work organisation. That's why the TUC recently worked with Co-ops UK and the Cooperative College to look at examples of self-organisation amongst self-employed workers. This report that we published towards the end of last year, called Organising Precarious Workers, Trade Union and Cooperative Strategies, found that an increased level of work between unions and self-employed workers, particularly those already going through a process of self-organisation into cooperatives, was certainly the art of the possible. And that's what we wanted to do with this report. We didn't want to make it a wish list of things that we would like to happen if the world was perfect. We wanted to reflect that this was already happening. And a message to my colleagues within the trade union movement was, if we don't get our act together and start organising workers, they'll do it themselves. People won't wait around for us to get round to organise them. So the report highlighted some really fantastic case studies showing genuine innovation on the part of self-employed workers, the cooperatives and trade unions. Now, time doesn't allow me to list all of them, and I really would commend the report to you. If there's an email circulation list for this event, I can certainly get it over and we can mail it out to people to save you trying to navigate the new TUC website, which even I can't find any. There are documents I've put on the TUC website that I can't find anymore. So I would say there are lots of different case studies, but there are 2 or 3 that I would say are pretty illustrative. We've all heard about the battles with Uber and their kind of attempts to contort, I would say, not just the law, but logic, in terms of how they employ or engage their partners. But there are case studies in there about quite long-standing taxi cooperatives in Edinburgh and Liverpool, supported by Unite the Union, proving that there is a genuine alternative to the Uberisation of this sector. And yes, an alternative that does include all the benefits to the customer of having an app and being able to order a taxi and pay for it using your mobile phone. There's the work that I think was featured recently in The Guardian between IndieCube, a supplier of shared workspace in Wales, and Community Trade Union, which will see the union host shared workspaces and offer support to self-employed workers, but also, through the union's expertise, provide services on bookkeeping and accounting, insurance, late payments and debt collection, and just as importantly, in fact more importantly, representation for those self-employed workers. And work that involved the Cooperative Group and the Cooperative College in Manchester, and teaching unions along with Unite and Unison and the GMB to address the increasing precarity amongst teachers and those working in education. Now, the report just wasn't a reflection of what was already going on. It did make demands on the cooperative movement and unions in particular to take steps to improve the capacity to create democratic and collective solutions for precarious workers. These include joint campaigns for legislation that supports the rights of self-employed workers to decent work, trade unions to support the development of union cooperatives for freelancers and provide services and working spaces, the creation of a cooperative employment partnership that organise, secure work for and provide representation for trade unions in precarious work, and the development of a trade union cooperative solidarity working group to build awareness and capacity. As we move forward this work, it will support the TUC's Great Jobs agenda, which makes a number of demands on government and employers: fair and decent pay, regular hours, healthy and safe workplaces, fair treatment and respect, and perhaps most importantly, a voice at work, a fair chance for unions and workers to secure recognition and representation. Between 2015 and 2016, trade union membership amongst self-employed workers increased by 30,000. I see this as a demand from self-employed workers for rights and representation, but also a challenge to my movement to meet that need. It's not a challenge that the trade union movement can meet alone. It will depend on a genuinely collaborative approach, but it's a challenge worth taking on to prove, if nothing else, this country's ever-growing army of insecure, precarious and self-employed workers that another world is possible. Thank you very much.